Ο ιδιοφυής Αρχιμίδης γεννήθηκε στις Σιρακούσες το 287 π.Χ. και είναι γνωστός κυρίως ως μαθηματικός. Στη μαθηματική του σοφία προστίθεται και το ταλέντο του ως μηχανικού, αλλά δυστυχώς τα περισσότερα μαθηματικού περιεχομένου έργα του, όπως και οι σπουδαιότερες μηχανικές του ανακαλύψεις, δεν διασώζονται. Παρ' όλα αυτά, η σύνδεση που επιχείρησε μεταξύ μηχανικής και μαθηματικών είναι γνωστή από συσχετισμούς και μεταγενέστερες ανακατασκευές σαν αυτές των κατόπτρων, του ατμοτηλεβόλου, του οδομέτρου, της ουράνιας σφαίρας και άλλων πολλών. Ίσως το πιο χαρακτηριστικό παράδειγμα της σύνδεσης αυτής είναι η μετατροπή του μαθηματικού σχήματος της έλικας σε μια μηχανή, τον ατέρμονα
Archimedes calculated that to move a 1,000-pound boulder, it would take only 55 pounds to do the job. Using a lever 40 units long, with the fulcrum in the middle, the boulder won't budge. But moving it 2 units from the rock and putting 50 pounds on the other end balances the lever. Because the ratio of the lever's length from the fulcrum, 40 over 2 times 50 pounds, equals 1,000 pounds. Add 5 pounds, and Archimedes could put his boulder just where he wanted it. What Archimedes' law says is, in essence, the longer the lever, the easier the job.
τον ατέρμονα κοχλία. Η μηχανή αυτή χρησιμοποιήθηκε επί αιώνες για την άντληση νερού και για άλλες μηχανικές μετατοπίσεις. Μια φράση από ιστορικά κείμενα που περιγράφουν τον κοχλία αναφέρει «Επειδή δε το όργανο είναι κατασκευασμένο με πολλήν δεξιότητα, με ολίγην εργασία παραδόξως αντλείται πολύ είδωρ». Σε αυτή τη φράση στηρίχθηκε η έρευνα και η ανακατασκευή του. Ο χάλκινος κοχλίας λειτουργεί και με χαρακτηριστική ευκολία στο χειρισμό ανυψώνει σημαντικές ποσότητες νερού σε λίγο χρόνο.
This is a book that could have changed the history of the world. It contains the revolutionary ideas of a genius who was centuries ahead of his time. Archimedes. The book was lost to the world for more than 1,000 years, passing through the hands of scribes, monks, forgers, and shady scholars. Yet no one seemed to know the book's true value until it surfaced at auction, selling for $2 million. The buyer, a billionaire who wouldn't reveal his identity. But instead of hiding it away, he put the precious manuscript into the hands of those who could unlock its secrets.
When the manuscript arrived, shivers ran down my spine.
But interpreting Archimedes' manuscript proved to be more difficult than anyone had imagined. The nearly invisible tracings of his words lay under the writings of a medieval prayer book. As scientists work to recover the text from this fragile document, they are discovering that Archimedes was further ahead of his time than they had ever believed. If his secrets had not been hidden for so long, the world today could be a very different place.
We could have been on Mars today. We could have accomplished all of the things that people are predicting for a century from now.
A story of intrigue, up next on Nova. Infinite Secrets. He is legendary as the man who made a discovery in the bath and shouted, "Eureka! I have found it," while running naked through the streets of his town. He is the most famous of the ancient mathematicians and the first to discover the value for pi, the mathematical equivalent of inventing the wheel. He is Archimedes, one of the most brilliant thinkers of all time. But what we know about Archimedes is about to change. This newly found manuscript reveals that Archimedes' ideas were so advanced they could have altered the course of modern science. And now, the long-lost secrets of this genius are about to be rediscovered.
The Archimedes manuscript is, to all intents and purposes, the material remains of the thought of the man. I like to think of it as his brain in a box. And it's for us to dig into that box and to pull out new thought. I wake up every day knowing that Archimedes is actually dependent upon the team of people that we've gathered together to really allow him to speak for the first time.
And what he has to say is the culmination of a remarkable journey, one that began 2,000 years ago.
We know more about Archimedes than any other Greek mathematician from antiquity, which is not to say we know a lot, because we know practically nothing about the others.
The story starts around 300 BC, on the island of Sicily, where Archimedes lived in Syracuse, a city-state ruled by Greece. His father sent him to study in the scholarly center of the world, Alexandria, Egypt, where he learned from the writings of Aristotle, Plato, and Euclid. Archimedes soon revealed an extraordinary genius for mathematics.
We're told that Archimedes was so preoccupied with his mathematical work that sometimes even just to get him to go to bathe was difficult. His slaves would have to carry him off forcibly, we're told, and even in the bath he would spend his time drawing little diagrams with the soap suds presumably on his body.
On one particular day, he was trying to solve a problem about a gold wreath that had been given to the king of Syracuse. The king suspected that the goldsmith had slipped in some cheaper, lighter silver. The goldsmith could easily have disguised his deceit by making the wreath bigger, so it weighed the same as it would if it were pure gold.
Archimedes' insight into how to determine a volume is supposed to have come when he got into a bath, noticed that the more of him went in, the more water poured out of the edges of the bathtub, and realized that this was in fact giving an exact measure of the volume of him going in. And this would apply to the crown too. You could find how big the crown was by immersing it in a vessel of water and seeing how much water was displaced. He's supposed to have been so excited by this discovery that he immediately leaped out of his bath and, without throwing any clothes on, ran naked through the streets of Syracuse, shouting the Greek word, "I've discovered it, Eureka, Eureka."
What he had discovered was the principle of liquid displacement and a way to prove that the king's wreath was too big to be pure gold.
When the wreath was immersed in the water, then it turned out that in fact its volume was greater than it should have been if it had been pure gold. So the smith was clearly not an honest one, and Archimedes has successfully worked out some good detective work.
Not only did he excel at mathematics, but he was an inventor as well. Many of his ideas are used in machines today, but he was best known and feared for his weapons of war. In a garden in Philadelphia, Chris Rorris, a University of Pennsylvania mathematician, has recreated one of Archimedes' most impressive schemes.
This is a model of the walls of Syracuse, the Greek city-state in Sicily, in which Archimedes lived. He was assigned by his king to be the military advisor and to design the defenses of the city. And his main defense were these so-called claws or iron hands that lined about a 1 kilometer long piece of the wall. The ships would come in close to the wall, then the claw would be swung around and the grappling hook dropped. The ship would be raised a certain amount, then the grappling hook would be suddenly released, the ship would come smashing into the ground. All of these actions just frightened the Romans to death.
But his arsenal of war machines did not end there.
Although Archimedes didn't invent the catapult, he greatly improved its design.
Until Archimedes, a catapult could only hurl its missile a fixed distance, called its range.
He made it a variable range machine. The Romans were in for a surprise since no matter where their fleet was located, they were bombarded by these catapults. This one here is spring-loaded. You wind it up and then you release it and off the arrow goes.
As his reputation grew, so did the challenges.
The king of Syracuse asked him for some demonstration of his powers. With a combination of pulleys and levers, he was able to pull a ship onto the shore all by himself. And the king of Syracuse was so amazed by this that he proclaimed that from now on everything that Archimedes says must be believed. It was on this basis that Archimedes gave his famous boast, "Give me a place to stand and I will move the earth."
But Archimedes' true love was mathematics. He devised an ingenious method using straight lines to measure a circle, finding the value for pi. It's one of the most widely used mathematical values today.
Archimedes wants to find a value as close as reasonably possible to what we would call pi, the ratio of the circumference of a circle. Here's our circle.